Hello, students. I'm Parneet Jaggi, and today we're going to be taking up the text of the essay on national prejudices written by Oliver Goldsmith. On National Prejudices is the essay which was first published in August 1760 in the British magazine, in which Goldsmith invariably argues that it is possible to love one's own country without actually hating the natives of other countries. So the essay goes like this: As I am one of that sauntering tribe of mortals who spend the greatest part of their time in taverns, coffee houses, and other places of public resort, I have thereby an opportunity of observing an infinite variety of characters. So, this I is the author himself. Goldsmith says that because I am one of those sauntering tribe of mortals means man, a man who faces death, who dies. He says, I am one of those moving. Sauntering means the person who is not settled at one place, because Goldsmith is known to have been wandering all the times. He was moving from one place to another. So he says, because I am always on the move, I am a person who spends a large part of my time in taverns, in the inns, roadside inns, coffee houses, and other places of public resort. So he says, therefore, I have an opportunity to observe a lot many characters. I go through lots of experiences that are diverse and different, which to a person of a contemplative turn is a much higher entertainment than a view of all curiosities of art or nature. So he says these experiences of meeting with different kinds of people is actually a great entertainment for me rather than looking at art or nature. In one of these, my late rambles, I accidentally fell into the company of half a dozen gentlemen who were engaged in a warm dispute about some political affair. So he says, in one of these meetings, when I was visiting a public place, I accidentally, perchance, I fell into the company of around half a dozen, means around 6 gentlemen, who were actually disputing and debating about politics. The decision of which, as they were equally divided in their sentiments, they thought proper to refer to me, which naturally drew me in for a share of the conversation. So now, because those 6 gentlemen were not agreeing at one point, so they referred to me for my opinion on that particular issue. Among a multiplicity of other topics, we took occasion to talk of the different characters of several nations of Europe, when one of the gentlemen, cocking his hat and assuming such an air of importance as if he had possessed all the merit of the English nation in his own person, declared. Now, he says there was a multiplicity of topics. There were a number of topics being discussed among that group, but we actually we were discussing different characters of different nations of Europe. So when one of the gentlemen, he had an air of superiority, he tilted his hat, and assuming an air of importance means showing himself as more important than others, as if he was possessing some extra merits of English nation. Now, here we come to know that he was an Englishman. He said that the Dutch were a parcel of avaricious wretches, the French a set of flattering sycophants, that the Germans were drunken sots and beastly gluttons, and the Spaniards proud, haughty, and surly tyrants, but that in bravery, generosity, clemency, and every other virtue, the English excelled all the world. Now, this was a very offensive statement or declaration by this gentleman who was English, who asserted that actually the Englishmen were better than all these Europeans, the Dutch. The Dutch were wretches, they were avaricious. Now, these are negative comments that he is giving to these people of different nations. So he says, English gentleman says that Dutch are wretches and French are flattering sycophants, that they flatter, they are hypocritical. Germans were drunken sots, they were too much into drinking. and beastly gluttons. They were like they had those animal instincts for eating too much food. And the Spanish people, the Spaniards, were proud, arrogant, and tyrants. They were like evil, they were like dominating. But he said, now he asserted his own superiority over these other natives, that in bravery, generosity, clemency, and every other virtue the English excelled all the world. Now, this was a very heavy remark which showed what prejudices are. Now, what is a prejudice actually? Prejudice means when we are prejudging somebody without looking at the reality. We have not bothered to face the reality or find out the reality, but we are preforming our opinions about that particular person or nation or particular object. So, on national prejudices here means that we are prejudging the other nations, other races, and the people of those nations based on our own personal opinions, which are, of course, narrow minded. This very learned and judicious remark was received with a general smile of approbation by all the company. Now, approbation means approval. So, when this gentleman remarked about the European people, this remark was actually received with approval by the rest of the people. All, I mean, but your humble servant, who, endeavouring to keep my gravity as well as I could, I reclined my head upon my arm, continued for some time in a posture of affected thoughtfulness, as if I had been musing on something else, and did not seem to attend to the subject of conversation, hoping by these means to avoid the disagreeable necessity of explaining myself, and therefore thereby depriving the gentleman of his imaginary happiness. Now, here, author is I. He said, I am your humble servant. I tried to keep my gravity, means I tried to keep grounded, not to speak loud against the remarks that they were passing. I even put my head upon my arm so that I could prevent intruding into their conversation and saying that they were wrong. So he said, I tried my best to keep a posture of affected thoughtfulness. Affected means he is trying to show that he is being thoughtful because he does not want to debate and disagree with what they are saying. Because they had their imaginary happiness that, look, we are Englishmen and we have these points of superiority over the other Europeans. But the author is kind of disapproving what they are saying, but he is trying to avoid speaking anything. But my pseudo-patriot had no mind to let me escape so easily. Not satisfied that his opinion should pass without contradiction, he was determined to have it ratified by the suffrage of everyone in the company. So, pseudo-patriot means a patriot who was not a patriot in the real sense of the word, but he was a fake patriot. He was a false patriot. Why? Because he was praising and approving of only his own nationality, and he was disapproving or looking down upon the other nationalities. So he says, he did not actually let me escape easily. He was determined to have his remark signed and ratified by my suffrage, by my vote. He wanted me to say yes in his favor. For which purpose, addressing himself to me with an air of inexpressible confidence, he asked me if I was not in the same way of thinking. So, he directly asked me if I was not thinking in the same way as what he was expressing about the Europeans. As I never forward in giving my opinion, especially when I have reason to believe that it will not be agreeable. So, when I'm obliged to give it, I always hold it for a maxim to speak my real sentiments. So Goldsmith here says that I'm not very keen in giving my opinion, especially when I know I'm going to disagree and they are going to disagree with me. But he says when I have to give it, when I'm supposed to, expected to give it, then I hold myself to speak it in a short sentence, a concise, a precise maxim to speak out what really my sentiments are. I therefore told him that for my own part, I should not have ventured to talk in such peremptory strain unless I had made the tour of Europe. So he explains to him that unless he himself has seen the whole of Europe, unless he knows all the people of Europe and he has had the experience of meeting him, he would not speak in such a peremptory strain, in such a negative tone about those people, that Spaniards were haughty and Dutch were these and they were these. So he says, unless and until I have had the tour of Europe and have examined the manners of these several different nations with accuracy, that perhaps a more impartial judge would not scruple to affirm that the Dutch were more frugal and industrious, French more temperate and polite, Germans more hardy and patient of labor and fatigue. So he says, if we go around these nations and look at their lifestyles and their temperaments with more care, more accuracy, then he says, perhaps a more impartial judge, a person who would not be partial, who would not be prejudiced to other people, would not actually scruple to affirm that the Dutch could be more frugal and industrious, means very hardworking. While that Englishman is saying that the Dutch are avaricious wretches, he says no. After looking at them carefully, we could also find that the Dutch were more frugal, they were more industrious, they were more economical. The French more temperate and polite. The French may be more temperate, moderate, and even polite. The Germans more hardy and patient of labor and fatigue. And the Spaniards more staid and sedate, more calm, more peaceful than the English, who, though undoubtedly brave and generous, were at the same time rash, headstrong, and impetuous, too apt to be elated with prosperity and too despond in adversity. Now, this is a huge remark that Goldsmith is giving to his own nation. He says, now because this company, this group is asking for my validation, I would not give my final conclusion until I go for a tour in Europe and I become a more impartial judge who would not hesitate. Scruple means to hesitate to affirm, to confirm that these people could be better than what you are telling them to be. Germans could be more hardy, they could be more patient. Spaniards could be more calm, they could be more peaceful. So, towards the end of this paragraph, he says that on the contrary, I have seen that the English, no doubt, they are brave and generous, but at the same time, they are rash, they are reckless, they are headstrong, and they are not so disciplined as we see them to be, and they are because they are not temperate. They are not balanced, they are too apt. They are too apt to be elated with prosperity. Means when they are in prosperity, when they are in good times, they are in the high skies, they are elated, they are happy. But when they are in adversity, when they face poverty or low times, then it is like despondence. They lose heart, they give up, and they do not maintain that courage or equilibrium in life. So this is how Goldsmith introduces us to the company of those 6 gentlemen who actually brag, who show their haughtiness and arrogance in being Englishmen, and who are all full of prejudices for the other nations of Europe. So we'll continue with this essay in the next video. Thank you for now.